welcome back to the podcast that must not be named. I am Luke.
I am Melissa.
And we are here doing chapter number 16 of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, entitled The Goblet of Fire. This chapter was 24 pages long, and that is 3.27% of this book. Benj, let's hear that executive summary.
As the guest students and teachers all find seats in the entrance hall, several of the girls are smitten with the arrival of Victor Crumb, and Ron hopes he will sit with them. However, the Durmstrang brood choose to sit with the Slytherins at their table. The Beauxbatons students complain about the cold and the food, and sit with the Ravenclaws, and Ron spots one so pretty he's convinced she's a Veela. After the feast, Dumbledore introduces the impartial decider of the champions, the Goblet of Fire. All that want to enter must do is place their name and the name of their school on a piece of paper and place it in the goblet. He warns that he himself has placed an age restriction line around the goblet and cautions not to be tested. As the crowd disperses, Harry runs into Professor Karkaroff, who is stunned by his presence and is scared off by Moody, who is just behind Harry. The following day, Fred and George use an aging potion to enter their names. However, as they cross the age line, both are flung back and sprout impressive, identical beards. That afternoon, Harry, Ron, and Hermione slip off to Hagrid's, who for some reason has dolled himself up with slick back hair, and a Harry Brown suit, and some cologne. They discuss the Scroots and the tournament, and he rightfully shoots down Hermione's request to join Spew. The evening comes and they all start to head back to the castle, but Hagrid leaves them in the dust when he spots Madame Maxine. After the second feast in 2 days, the Goblet of Fire begins to spark and spits out slips of paper. Fleur Delacour, the Veela girl, is Beauxbaton's champion. Victor Crumb is Durmstrang's, and Cedric Diggory is picked for Hogwarts. Suddenly, a fourth name is shot from the goblet: Harry Potter.
Alright, so we had a few new character introductions. There was a girl from Beauxbaton. That was
really specific.
Yeah, there were a few kind of generic characters here, unnamed. We did have a named character of Polyakov, who wanted some warm wine as well, but that wasn't going to happen.
No, we had a third-year girl.
Yeah, that was
speaking lines.
Yes, it's. I'm glad we have so many named characters.
We had several sixth-year girls.
Yes, we sure did.
Mm-hmm.
There are other students in the school, apparently.
Surprise!
And we had a second mention of a Miss Fawcett from Ravenclaw. Last time we heard of her was during the dueling club with Professor Lockhart back in the day.
Lockhart.
And right along with that, we had a Mr. Summers of Hufflepuff. Those were the two other just barely underage students who tried to thwart the age line. There's no music right there. So we also were looking for new locations. We didn't really see any. It seems like we've been getting fewer and fewer of those as we've gone along. We've kind of got our main places and didn't go anywhere new this chapter, but that's okay.
That's okay.
And we did have a couple Magicabulary. We had the titular Goblet of Fire.
Of book and chapter.
And yeah, so that's a pretty cool character, almost. It's got a job.
It's called an impartial judge.
Right, it's got a little anthropomorphism on it. It's got a few human characteristics as it goes.
Yes.
And there was also the introduction of a magic called an age line.
Right.
So, Melissa,
Great.
What does our illustration look like this chapter?
Well, it is a goblet, and it is on fire.
Filled to the brim with blue flames.
Although, in my illustration, it's really more of a grayish flame.
It's more like
black and white picture.
Pencil-colored.
Pencil-colored, yes. I will say that the illustration goblet, much like the correct goblet choice in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, is much more plain looking in this illustration than one would have pictured a fancy goblet for the Goblet of Fire.
Right. Yeah, and actually, I think we'll touch on that again here in a little while when we get into our notes, because I thought about that too. This actually looks fancier than the way I think it's described.
Right.
But I think it looks cool. It's clearly like an old ceremonial type thing. I think it's...
And it might be like historically accurate for a goblet in the times when the Triwizard Tournament was originally created, much like the Crusades. So it was something done at, the right time, but it's not what you picture.
Right.
So
I do
don't
like it,
choose
though.
poorly.
I do like it.
Yes.
All right, Melissa, let's get into some of your thoughts among thoughts for this chapter.
I have to say they're very random, this chapter, because while it was a very long chapter and things
long,
happened, it did feel long. And I feel like I've been putting off taking notes for this chapter for the weeks and weeks that I've been meaning to do it, simply because not enough, things happen, but not anything that I want to comment on. Great, the people come. Great, there's a feast.
It's a lot of
there's
plot
a goblet.
things that aren't
and
overly
it's
interesting.
Okay, goblet, great, I got it. Put your name in. Age line, got it. Twins with beards, got it. Another feast, got it. They pick champions. That's it. There's no... I don't feel an emotional tie to this chapter.
Yep.
So it's not in the running for favorite.
I was actually going to comment on that. Aside from a few choice spots in here, I would honestly put this kind of, for what we've seen in this book so far, almost second to last. Just comparatively.
Behind what?
Chapter 2.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, I get nothing happened.
I mean, lots
I think
of things
about writing a letter. I think about writing a letter.
Things happened.
Did they? No, he wrote a letter. That's it.
No, in this chapter. I'm saying that's what makes this chapter that much better.
Yep.
Things happened.
And the very end of this chapter is amazing. I love the very, very end of this chapter.
Yes. And in general, the things that happened in this chapter were important. We needed to know these things. But that's what the chapter felt like, a need to know.
It's a bit of an info dump, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is okay.
But I do have some random, things that stood out or funny or just whatever. And the first is that the Beauxbaton students stand when their headmistress walks by.
Very proper.
I like that sign of respect that I feel like might be lacking a bit at Hogwarts. Not that Dumbledore needs that or has any sense that they should do that for him, but the fact that that's my headmaster, this is what I do to show her respect. I find that very interesting.
That true sense of authority that Madame Maxine kind of demands. It's I'm sure that's something that the students are taught early on at Beauxbaton. It's not something they just choose to do. It's something that they're required to do, but they also do it. Which doesn't discount the meaning behind it.
Well, and it's just this is what you do. It's not an option. It's not a choice. It's not up for debate. This is the routine and ritual that we expect of you.
Yep.
So, my next thought is, speaking of Beauxbaton, Ron's kind of an idiot around girls, right? Kind of an idiot with that whole first, what is that called? The first feast, if you will, where he's putting the things to the side and, oh, sure, you can have this. And
the bouillabaisse.
Yeah, but then here's what's funny. Harry's kind of just as big of an idiot. He's just in general a quieter person than Ron is, so I don't think it's as apparent. But they're both sitting there staring at girls. And the line of, they don't make them like that at Hogwarts. They make them okay at Hogwarts, said Harry without thinking. I think he's just as big of an idiot about it and doesn't know, but it just isn't as vocally stupid as Ron might be.
I don't know. I have a hard time calling Harry an idiot about it. Definitely inexperienced, so that's okay. But it's his first crush.
That's what I mean by the word idiot. Yeah. Idiot about girls. They don't know anything.
Yeah, definitely. They don't. Well, where would they learn that? This is, again, he's, 13, 14 years old?
14.
And recently 14 at this point is just fairly... I don't know. He hasn't had much experience with hanging out with girls much. He's got Hermione there, and that's an odd relationship, but I don't know. It doesn't bother me that he's absent-mindedly thinking of Cho as Ron's
I'm not bothered by
blatantly
either
being
of
an
them.
idiot.
I just find it... I think both of them are funny. I am enjoying watching them stumble through not really know how to do this.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay. again with the Bobaton stuff. See, this is the stuff that stuck out to me. They did not come prepared to Hogwarts. I realize they may not have the weather bug app. I understand it didn't exist, and cell phones probably wouldn't work at Hogwarts anyway. But I mean, know your location. You're traveling to the northern side of the British Isles in the middle of October, end of October. It's gonna be cold.
It is stereotypically cold and rainy. Like it.
Right.
I'm with you.
That's well known.
Yeah, I get you have magic to deal with it, but
there should have been
maybe do that.
A packing list of
recommended items.
A cloak or something.
Yeah.
I feel no sympathy for them because that was you knew this was coming.
Mm-hmm. And I don't.
That's all.
I definitely don't get a feel of financially strained students from Bobaton, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I feel like it's even maybe a little bit more prestigious. At least seeming. If you go there, you feel like you're better than everyone else. I don't know. Maybe that's me projecting onto it, but I get the feeling that they think they're better than everybody, which to me would also kind of lead me to believe they're not going to be financially strapped to not be able to afford a cloak. I guess is they might not have it in their normal wardrobe. I get that, but if these 10, 20 students are showing up, they should.
I mean, it's not
prepared.
We're led to believe that this school is in France. And yes, parts of France are warmish most of the year, but a lot of it aren't. It's not like we're talking significant difference in latitude.
Mm-hmm.
Bring a jacket.
Right.
A pair of warm leggings. I don't know what to tell you.
Get one of Hermione's portable little fires.
Right. I mean, she did that in first year. Yeah. You're supposed to be the best of the best over there. Figure something out.
Figure it out.
There you go. All right. Can we just be happy about the twins for a minute?
Yes, absolutely.
Yay, twins. Yay, beards. Yay, trying. Yay, laughing at the mistake on themselves and not just getting mad about it.
Yeah.
That's all.
I know we'll revisit this here in a little bit, but yes, big thumbs up for the scene with the twins. Absolutely. Love that scene.
Yep, they're pretty awesome. And then my only other comments are about the champions who were chosen. Most of the champions, not all of them.
Mm-hmm.
First, is anyone surprised by the Bobaton or Durmstrang champions?
No, not really, especially because we know the Victor Crumb is exceptional. At least we're led to believe that, and clearly
he's favored.
Right. That's not all that surprising.
Mm-hmm.
The girl, we don't really know anything about her, but she's stood out to Ron and apparently a bunch of other boys around the room for potentially being some kind of resembling Avila. But I think, as the narrator is wont to point them out, and that it makes sense that you got to go with those characters. Yes. And Cedric Diggory, I think, makes a lot of sense as well. We know that the little bit that we know about him, he just seems like a decent, hardworking, clearly rather good-looking, character, but I'm not surprised by it. I wish it was Angelina Johnson, but I like that it's not a Gryffindor because we need to start having not Gryffindor-centric things in everything.
So how do you feel about it being a Hufflepuff?
Oh, I like it. I'm good with it.
Okay.
I'm sad that there was nothing that we heard about any Ravenclaws. No Ravenclaws entered, but as far as we know.
Technically, we don't know if any Slytherins entering either.
Warrington, the old Quidditch
that's
player.
Right.
Yep, he did.
Ugh.
But again, we're always in Harry's perspective, and I don't even know if he knows what Ravenclaws are. So he's not going to notice the Ravenclaws when they're around. So that I'm not upset by it. Yeah, that is true. There's one Ravenclaw in his book.
But she doesn't meet the age requirement, and he doesn't actually speak to her.
No, not much yet.
No,
not yet.
That's asking too much. We're just going to look.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's kind of all the notes I had. What did you ponder about?
So, my notes here were a little bit random as well. But I like that the narrator points out that Mr. Crouch looked funny in wizard's robes because he looked so convincing that he could, in muggle clothes, that he could have been a banker. Even, Vernon Dursley probably wouldn't have known him for what he was. And I just love that it kind of goes both ways here. It flips on itself that, maybe he looks better in banker's robes. He's just, because I don't think you could really wear a robe and have that same kind of straight-laced, conservative look. You know what I mean? It just doesn't really translate, especially to Harry, who grew up in Muggle society. So most of the characters that he knows in the Wizarding world are, a little odd, in their certain quirkiness ways. And Crouch is not that way. He's just not. He's very muggly.
So does that make him the oddity in the Wizarding world, seeing as how he doesn't have oddities?
I think in Harry's perspective, yeah. I mean, it's noticeable, clearly. If Harry's noticing it, it's noticeable, because Harry's not always the most perceptive, but that's okay. So, yeah, I think he's the odd duck in a pool of really weird ducks.
This is true.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we touched on this earlier with the illustration, but I really like how the Goblet of Fire is a very simple, unremarkable cup. You said it perfectly. It reminds me a lot of the Ark of the Covenant in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it's just neat because that makes sense.
No, not the Ark of the Covenant. The actual, Chalice of Christ from the Last Crusade.
Don't they call it the Ark of the Covenant?
No, that's from Raiders of the Lost Ark. That is the actual Ark. This is the Chalice.
Ah.
It's the Sean Connery movie.
Point being,
I'm just saying.
It's the Chalice. I apologize.
Thank you. Sorry. It was
but
going to bother me.
It's the same concept here as that. And I really like that, because it should be boring. And it's doing amazing things. And I think that's kind of a cool dichotomy from it. Even simple things can be amazing.
The ordinary can be outstanding.
Mm-hmm. The ordinary can be extraordinary.
Okay, then. There was a voice there. It did a thing. All right.
Speaking of voices, we have Karkaroff.
He's a voice, that's for sure.
I thought the interaction between him and Harry was interesting when Harry very politely holds the door open for him, and as they're walking out of the opening feast, I guess it is, or this start of tournament feast kind of deal. And Karkaroff's like, oh, thanks, kind of carelessly as he starts walking through, which polite of Karkaroff as well, thanking the kid for doing a nice thing for him. And then he sees who it is, and he's just dumbfounded by this. He just is gaping, open mouthed that, oh my gosh, it's Harry Potter. We haven't seen too many adults be affected quite like this. We've seen early on, yes, in the Leaky Cauldron, absolutely fawning over him and everything. But there haven't been too many like this.
Well, and I think for a couple of reasons. One, because British Wizarding World has maybe gotten more used to Harry being part of it again.
Okay.
As in, he lived at the Leaky Cauldron for a month, so most of, the shopkeepers and stuff, he wasn't a novelty.
It's like anymore. Seeing a movie actor in Los Angeles. It happens. Not a big deal.
Right.
See that around St. Louis? It's a little bit bigger of a deal. It doesn't happen here.
Exactly. So think about that. Karkaroff is the tourist showing up, not realizing that that person is here. And it's not even if you go to Los Angeles, you're like, okay, I might see some famous people. Yeah. It's like walking around
your day job or
right. I was thinking Scarsdale, Arizona, where all those people are used to so-and-so who lives here, but you had no idea this person would even that there could be anybody of
or
note.
Walking around Maine and there's Stephen King. Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, just in general, going somewhere where that person, you had no concept that person could be, and everybody else is like, what? That's just dude. He's here all the time.
He's a fixture. He's a regular.
He comes every Sunday morning for brunch, and every Friday he picks, I don't know, his daily cantaloupe from the corner market.
Yeah. So right along with that, I like how Moody steps in and he's he kind of calls him out on it. And it's just a really interesting conversation, one-sided conversation that kind of happens because Karkaroff also doesn't seem to know that Moody was going to be there. And he's like, you? And Moody's just like, me. I loved it.
John.
Right. And if you're going to ask Harry Potter for something, you might want to do it or else get out of the way. You're blocking the fire exit.
That's really awesome.
I thought it was just funny and interesting to see how Karkaroff reacted to both of those characters in a very short period.
I agree.
Then we have this scene with Hagrid. We go to Hagrid's hut, and he's all dressed up. He seems to have tried to pull his hair back in a man bun. He's putting on some cologne. A little out of character for him.
A bit. First of all, he definitely needs some help with the hairstyle. He needs some like leave-in conditioner spray or something.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
it's a little too
it's
much
pretty rough.
volume.
Yeah.
And right in that same scene, we have Hagrid deciding not to support SPEW.
Oh, yeah.
And were you surprised by that?
Yes and no. Like, at first you're like, but Hagrid, he likes all the beings and all the things. But at the same time, like, I see his point. It's not like they're hurting in their own opinion. And I mean, I still think Hermione's got the right view of it, that the way not fair. But Hagrid's
say
point
that one more time.
they like.
Sorry.
I agree with Hermione's point that the way their lives are is not fair, and something needs to change. But I think Hagrid brings up the really interesting point that they like what they do. They like being helpful. And I think it's more than just. I always equate it back to like owning slaves. That's what I think we're supposed to equate it to. But I wonder if, because they're a different species entirely, that there is something ingrainedly servant-like about house elves. I mean, it's in their name, first of all, house elves. But like, if that's just their purpose is to care for others, but that we can do things to respect them as they do it. I don't know.
I agree with your main point. I think Hagrid kind of gets that as well. The thing about they're named that, I don't really like that, because you could just call it, oh, these are just slave people. Like,
right,
it's
I know.
And I know that's not what you were going for. I'm just clearing the air that that's not really what we're saying. It's
no, it's more like,
and you could easily attribute a name onto a group of people and have it just seem okay. And that's historically been a big problem.
So ignore that part of what I said.
That was the only thing I wanted to
like,
kind of dox.
Like, Hermione wants them to stop doing what they're doing. And Hagrid's point is they really enjoy what they do.
Right.
So it's how do we then give them respect and a voice in government and paying and rights, and still allow them to do this thing they like.
And yeah,
and if they don't like it, to do something else.
It's almost exactly what Hagrid says. He says that it'd be doing them in unkindness, Hermione. It's in their nature to look after humans. That's what they like, see? You'd be making them unhappy to take away their work and insulting them if you tried to pay them. And that makes sense. You know, if that's fundamentally what they like doing, it's hard to change that ingrained mentality, especially if that's literally in their nature. It's a tough problem. It's a big one.
Yeah.
But and I think that is where I'm not surprised that Hagrid takes the stance he does, because for him, he's doing what he believes, you know, he's following what he believes the nature of this, we'll call it beast or being wants. You know, it's fundamentally who they are, and who am I to change that?
Except, okay, hold on. I'm going to swing it back around. How does he know that's what they are and what they like?
Right.
Has he ever asked them? Has he ever talked to them? Or is he just assuming based on what he's seen, and again, maybe having a bit of a bias as, you know, a human as opposed to a house elf, that, oh yeah, they like this, they're happy doing this. Does he really know that?
Right. And we know he has tendencies to have some biases. We know that against muggles at times. And yes, you can debate it was specifically against the Dursleys, but it seems like there have been some muggle biases. There's certainly goblin biases. He doesn't seem to like hanging out with the goblins. And Dementors. He's got it out for Dementors. Not a fan of them either. Give him a chance.
You know what? I'm okay with that.
I know. But
is that right?
Yeah, I agree. I would like to see him interact with a house elf and see if he can gain more perspective.
I think this all goes back to the point that I've been saying for a while now of talk to them. Do not do for others until they, like, you get what they want.
Yep. Don't be a savior of a problem you don't understand.
Yes. That's a perfect way to say it. Thank you.
That's really all I had for these notes here. You got anything else?
Alrighty. No, I think I'm ready for our next section.
And of course, that next section is our 5 burning questions. Melissa, let them go.
Okay. For question number 1. So there are barely 20 extra students. There's a line that says that even though there are barely 20 extra students, it still feels crowded.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a reasonable amount for each school to bring? That they each brought roughly 10 students to put their names in the goblet when Hogwarts has all of the 7th years and you would say at least a handful of the 6th years to choose from?
Yeah, that's a good question. It seems like it's very selective from their schools. It's almost like, why did anyone from Durmstrang even put their name in outside of Victor Crumb? If Karkaroff would have had his way, that's probably all that would have happened, but maybe even he can't pull that kind of card. I don't know. I wouldn't have been surprised. But it does seem like a kind of a small amount. Or maybe, again, this is more of, maybe Beauxbaton and Durmstrang are a little bit more, is egalitarian the word I'm looking for? It covers more classes in their schools than we're led to believe. And we're only seeing that upper echelon of family well-offedness. And so it kind of leads to some of these stereotypes that I've created in my head of them. You know what I mean? Like, so maybe we're only seeing these very well-off students who could afford to do this.
Like, I don't know if it's necessarily a wealth thing as opposed to a, what's the word I'm looking for? A skills, like...
merit-based?
Yes, like... Because I guarantee there's more than 10 students at each school within the age range. You would assume.
Right, I agree.
So how are these 10-ish per school chosen? Was it the ones with the highest grades? Was it the ones that stood out? Were they teacher favorites? Did it have to, like, every teacher got a chance to nominate one?
Right. What was that
there
pre-selection
some sort of competition? Like? Yes, because they had to go through that, and Hogwarts students did not.
Right.
It was just, put your name in if you're old enough. Good luck.
Right.
So I feel like, I'm changing my question. I almost wonder if there's more at stake not at stake, but like a bigger sense of competition for those students because they've already been invested in getting here even.
Sure. I think it's a reasonable, question. I don't know. And I think that's maybe where, yes, there could have been a merit-based thing that went into it, or potentially a wealth-based thing that, hey, we can afford to send our student to do this. I don't know. I feel like Hogwarts would have had some kind of pre-selection also. Or, I don't know. There's just a weird there's a weird difference between the way Hogwarts is run and the way these other two schools are run as well, as we've already seen. That's a very different feel, at least.
Okay. Question 2. Is the Beauxbaton girl a Vila like Ron believes?
I don't think so, because the last time we saw Vila, it affected Harry too. So we know it affected Ron a little bit more, I think.
And other boys around.
Right. It just, unless Harry's had some character growth that we really haven't seen about it, I feel like if it was an actual legitimate Vila, it would have affected Harry at least a little bit more than it seemed like. But he also had Cho to be distracted by, so.
That's what I was going to say. Maybe he yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Hermione doesn't seem to think so, and her knowledge it's easy to trust.
Yeah. Okay. Question 3. Is it possible to have too many feasts?
They've had quite a few already this year, right? This is the second and third.
Yes, and they were one day after another. That's a lot of celebratory activities.
Yep.
So yes, it is possible. Either that or Harry just doesn't appreciate it.
Yeah, it's almost, nah, you can't have too many.
That's what I thought.
Be like the Roman empires. Every day is, bread and circuses.
It's Groundhog's Day.
Right. What are we celebrating today? I don't know. It's a holiday of some sort.
That's right. Reminds me of like one of those Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas or Twice Upon a Christmas things where Huey, Dewey, and Louie have to celebrate Christmas every day.
Yep. And they get tired of it.
3 days. They get exhausted until they finally figure out, like, why are we doing this?
The real purpose of Christmas.
Yes. I actually heard a theory the other day that Ferris Bueller's Day Off is that exact same concept.
Yeah.
That's why he's able to, like, know exactly where to be and when and why it's going to work. Because he's done this a million times. It was really interesting for a dumb movie. Question 4. What would happen if someone who was selected did not want to participate in the tournament?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of ominous the way it's described, isn't it? It's, he or she is obliged. Placing your name in the Goblet of Fire constitutes a binding magical contract. So don't enter if you don't intend to see it through. That is...
Yeah.
That's heavy, right? I mean, it's like, what's going to happen? We already know that they've taken they've tried to prevent fatal things from happening during whatever these tasks are going to be.
Uh-huh.
But this almost seems like, well, if you go against it, you're probably going to die. You're just going to drop dead if you don't show up for the task.
Right. Like, what if I just don't come? What if
I have a flu that day.
If I'm sick that day? Right. Like, should I show up and, like, step in and say, okay, I'm done. I'm out.
You just walk up with your white flag.
Yeah.
Right?
I defer to the rest of you.
Yeah, it seems pretty ominous. I don't know. What do you think would happen?
I wonder if you would get, like, burn marks. Like, if the Goblet of Fire would just lash out and brand you a quitter.
Yeah, maybe. Just public humiliation for the rest of your life.
Pretty much.
Reasonable. Okay, I like it.
Excellent. Question 5. How did Harry's name get into the goblet?
All right, I've got a couple ideas here.
Go for it.
So we know that there's an age line, right?
Yes.
You can't cross the age line.
No.
The goblet looks like it has a fairly wide bowl to
Yes.
the chalice itself. Could you just, like, write your name on a piece of paper, wad it up, and, like, shoot at it and just make it in? You're not crossing the line.
Like basketball style?
Yeah, exactly. Take a free throw.
If you can throw.
You can write your name 100 times.
But
you have 100 shots.
Scraps around.
Oh, then you can just,
Clean it up somehow.
yeah, blow some air, wind Guardium.
Or you can Wingardium Leviosa your name paper up
Exactly.
and over into the goblet.
Or you could get an owl to try to, drop it in. Swoop over.
Interesting.
Fly over.
So you think Harry did it?
Even somebody else could have done that with his name on it as a practical joke.
Ooh, like Malfoy.
Right.
I like to blame Malfoy.
Or any Slytherin. Or, yeah, I mean, Malfoy could have put an older Slytherin up to it. There's nothing saying that once you cross that line, you can only put one name in. It just says you have to be 17 to cross the line. So like, have Warrington show up.
In 7th year, I could take a handful of names of everybody and just
Seems
dump
like
everybody.
you could have, yeah.
If, of course, I liked them all well enough to put their name in competition to myself.
Right. Or if, like, we're accusing, I'll say Warrington would have done this.
Sure.
Putting Harry's name in to force him into a dangerous situation so you can laugh at him and hope that he gets killed.
Yeah. Or could you have, like, as you're watching somebody else walk up, could you
Bribe them?
transfigure the paper in their hand to change the name written on it to Harry's name? So that, and that way, I mean, it could have been Harry doing that to Angelina's paper. It could have been Draco doing that to Warrington's paper. It could have been anybody transfiguring somebody else's paper so that the person doing it doesn't even know they're doing it for you.
Right. Yeah. The unsuspecting victim.
Like, only Cedric's paper is not suspect.
Right.
Since his name came out.
Yeah. The only real big question is, how is there 4 champions? Like, that's the big thing, is there's clearly 3 in a tri-wizard tournament. It's literally called 3 wizards are going to be in this tournament. Like, how is there a 4th? That's the biggest part of it. That, yeah, getting your name in is one thing, but somehow confusing it to, actually select a 4th one is...
Yeah, I find that odd. I feel like if Harry had put his name in, they would have just picked him instead of Cedric, as opposed to in addition to.
Right. Yep, I agree.
So I don't really know, but I don't think he did it.
I don't think he did it.
Okay.
Good point. And it's that time of the episode where we talk about what our favorite things were. Melissa, what was your favorite line this chapter?
I really want to defer to you because our lines are basically one right after the other, and yours actually comes first. So can you do yours, and I'll just follow up with mine.
I sure will. I'll just keep reading. You tell me when to stop. Because I actually chose a very long section.
Okay.
For a split second, Harry thought it had worked. George certainly thought so, for he let out a yell of triumph and leapt after Fred. But next moment, there was a loud sizzling sound, and both twins were hurled out of the golden circle as though they had been thrown by an invisible shot putter. They landed painfully 10 feet away on the cold stone floor, and to add insult to injury, there was a loud popping noise, and both of them sprouted identical long white beards. The entrance hall rang with laughter. Even Fred and George joined in once they had gotten to their feet and taken a good look at each other's beards.
"I did warn you," said a deep, amused voice, and everyone turned to see Professor Dumbledore coming out of the Great Hall. He surveyed Fred and George, his eyes twinkling. "I suggest you both go up to Madame Pomfrey. She is already tending to Miss Fawcett of Ravenclaw and Mr. Summers of Hufflepuff, both of whom decided to age themselves up a little too. Though I must say, neither of their beards is anything like as fine as yours."
I love it. It's such a great comical, slapsticky, silly, whimsical scene. It feels like it's right out of like The Sword in the Stone with Merlin. You know, it's just like silly magic that, yep, I told you. Like this, you're not going to fool something with that simple of an answer.
Yes, and like the Fred and George stuff is hysterical. It's so Fred and George. It's so Larry, Moe, and Curly, like just Three Stooges type things. Because you know Lee Jordan was like right there with them, right?
Oh, yeah, he was getting ready to jump in himself.
Yep. But then Dumbledore coming in, and it was so quintessentially Dumbledore to be laughing at them for it, and then still complimenting them on the beard, even though they didn't get away with it at all. He knew they wouldn't get away with it.
They're like probably some of his favorite students. Like,
oh yeah,
just seems like they get along. They chum around a bit. Like again, like it seems like if they were out at a pub or something later on when the twins are older, you'd see them hanging out with Dumbledore. Like, it just seems to fit well.
Hands down. That's going to happen.
And I know we don't talk about the movie much, but I do think this scene is done pretty well in the movie. The Phelps brothers acting, I think, sells. It's almost one of those ones I think of them as the twins here when I see this scene happening in the book.
Yes. And it's one of the few parts of this book that the
actually
movie
made it to the movie.
Visual representation of.
That the movie actually got right.
One of the very few.
So, who was your chapter MVP?
Well, this is difficult because, again, this was not my favorite of chapters. So I really thought about it. And I said, who was I most excited about? And the answer came to me in that I was so excited that we had at least one person accurately representing the Gryffindor house. Miss Angelina Johnson, for putting her name in, for telling everybody she was putting her name in, and giving our heroes somebody to cheer behind.
Yeah, it's a good pick. I liked the way she stands up and's like, yeah, I just had my birthday last week, yo. Like, and does it. And yeah, she doesn't end up getting it, so it's kind of like false hope, because we know by the end of the chapter it's not her. But yeah, good on her. And if she would have been the Gryffindor champion, like, I'd have been fine with that. Like, I think that'd be a great way to do it as a Gryffindor character, because yes it's a girl. Yes, she's a person of color, as we were led to believe a few times here and there. And I think that'd have been a really good thing for this book series. But it makes a lot of sense also that it's Cedric Diggory.
Team Angelina.
I'm with you. That's who would get my vote for the legitimate Hogwarts
Miss
champion.
Fawcett from Ravenclaw.
Wow, her name got DQ'd. I know. I wish, though. I wish.
Watch those flip turns. All right.
And my honorable mention is going to go to the twins' beards. Not even the twins themselves, just the beards. They were lush. They were great volume. It was just, it was a good appearance.
Nice. And it looks like that wraps us up here for chapter number 16. You can find us in a variety of places to send us your favorite part of this particular chapter. We are on Twitter at Not Named Podcasts. You can email us at thepodcastthat@gmail.com, and you can find us online at thepodcastthat.com.
Please do go to iTunes and YouTube and subscribe and like to our shows there. Leave us comments there as well. We would truly, truly appreciate it. Check us out on Radio Public as well. It is free and easy to use their app, and it is a great way to help support our show without any extra effort on your part.
Join us next week as we discuss chapter number 17.
The Four Champions. Stay imaginary.
Thanks.